Past players, past legends, past legends.
Tonight we're absolutely privileged to have a South Australian footballing great, Glenelg legend in Peter Super Carey with us. Peter, casual 467 games, going by the South Australian records. Three-time SANFL Premiership player, 73, 85, 86. Glenelg captain, 83 to 88. Three-time Glenelg best and fairest, 75, 79, 81. Glenelg leading goal kicker in 73. Two-time All-Australian, team 79 and 80, with a real Glenelg link. We will go through that. Foss Williams medalist in 81. South Australian and Australian football and Glenelg Hall of Fame. A South Australian royalty. Welcome aboard, Super.
Thanks, boys. That's a big introduction.
That's about all we've got time for. We've done this a few times now, where we've had some stats that have gone on for a while. But mate, for all of that, we like to go back and start right from the beginning. Where did you sort of grow up and play some of your junior football?
Well, I moved out from England when I was 7 years old to Warrnambool. I went to Warrnambool Primary School and I started playing footy there. So I hadn't seen a footy until I was 7 and played footy at Warrnambool Primary School, and it all started from there.
Wow. So when did you then move over to South Australia, Pete?
I was there for 8 years.
Okay.
So all my footy until 15 was in Warrnambool. And we moved to Adelaide when I was 15. And my old man used to be a Glenelg supporter when he was younger, and made sure we lived in the Glenelg area. So started playing under 17s at Glenelg when I was 15.
Oh, you were certainly well known from Seacombe High, even back around then.
I'd actually, I hadn't told Seacombe High that I was even playing footy, but I think I had a few kicks on the oval with some of the guys that I just met, and obviously saw some talent. And so I thought I was just going to be playing under 17s, but I was playing for Seacombe High School at the same time. So I was playing 2 games most Saturdays.
And when was the league debut, and what's your memories of that, Pete?
Well, I'd played. Well, first of all, I couldn't get a clearance. I had to, because I came from Victoria. I was in the Hampden League, and we were tied to Fitzroy. So I had to wait for a clearance from Fitzroy. They didn't even respond to Harry Kernahan's request for a clearance, and after 6 weeks you reapply, and they didn't respond to that, so I got an automatic clearance from Fitzroy, which they had to suffer a bit later on when they tried to recruit me at some stage. I said, don't bother, you didn't even bother responding to a clearance. Now you're interested in me, but anyway, that's another story. So I had to sit out at under 17 footy for the first 6 weeks. So played 2/3 of the season there. Played a full year the year after. The under-19 coach wouldn't promote any of the guys that were playing school footy in the morning and then playing in the afternoon. He thought that was too much for the kids that were going to Seacombe High School. So just stayed in under 17s until 1971. Started in the under-19s in 71 with the intention of stopping playing once school footy started, because I wanted to focus on Year 12, but that didn't work out. So I played the first 5 games in the under-19s and then got promoted to the reserves. And once I was in the reserves, I was no longer required to play for the school. So
that's right.
I played 4 games in the reserves and got promoted middle of 1971 to league footy, and played my first game against Centrals at Elizabeth, which I didn't have a car or a licence. So
you've just got home, so yeah.
So it was interesting, because quite bizarre that I hadn't met one of the league players. I first trained on a Thursday night. Curls asked me to join training on a Thursday. So I trained with the leg side for about 20 minutes. We used to change in separate change rooms. Everything was divided then. The reserves and the league used to train separately. So I got a phone call at 9 o'clock on the Thursday night from our team manager to tell me that I was picked in the league side and had to report out Elizabeth at whatever. But I went very early because I had to get a ride with a mate that was playing reserves. So I got there at 10:30 and plenty of time for the league game. So that's how it all started. I've sort of... and it was quite unusual because I was mainly a centre-half forward.
Yes.
Growing up as a kid, loved playing centre-half forward. Didn't often go into the ruck. And as sort of history has it, our under-19s ruckman was injured. I replaced him, and then I went in the reserves because there was an injury in the ruckman in the reserves. So I sort of went through under-19s, reserves, and into the league as a ruckman, and I played very little footy as a ruckman. And my first game was against Dean Farnham, who was a man mountain, 6'9" or something, huge bloke. So that's how it all started. And I did play in the ruck mostly that first year, and it was the second year I started to sort of not necessarily play in the ruck all the time.
Yeah, because I knew in 73, sort of like you played mainly in centre forward in 73.
Absolutely.
And so reading you kicked 11 goals against North Adelaide in a game in 73, and of course then come one of the most. I still think, as a neutral person, it's the greatest ever South Australian grand final. Incredibly, 21 goals to 19, and a remarkable game in terms of Rexy Voigt kicked 7, you've kicked 6. And then the other player who was vying for best on-ground honours is Bob Hammond playing at fullback for North Adelaide. So a remarkable game.
It was a fantastic game of footy in quite warm conditions with a great crowd. And it's quite interesting. I probably shouldn't talk about this grand final because I know someone helping with the interviews happens to barrack for Nord, but that was a great grand final as well.
You can talk about any other grand final except the most current, mate.
Well, it's the first one we beat Nord, which was great, but it was a different game. Look, that game in 73, high scoring.
Yes,
it was in the balance most of the day, and it was. North hit the front with at the 29-minute mark. We kicked the last couple of goals. But this game was a bit different. I thought Nord controlled the game up until about the 7-minute mark of the third quarter, and then we came back from there. So it's a different feel of the game. But as a Glenelg supporter, to win a close one was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I know there was 17,500 Nord supporters there that didn't think it was a great finish, but there was a lot of happy Glenelg people. Let me tell you.
We will get back to.
Yeah, we will.
We will get back to that.
Who were some of your coaches there through your 17s, 19s, reserves, and obviously league at Glenelg when you first sort of got there?
So I had a guy called Trevor Kendall who played league footy for Glenelg, halfback flanker, number 17. I'd watched him a bit growing up. Then my under-19s coach was Len Fitzgerald, the great Len Fitzgerald, three McGarry. And I played a lot of footy with his son Wayne, who was playing under-19s at that time as well. So I played a few games under Len Fitzgerald and then moved into the reserves. Harry Kernahan was my reserves coach. And then, so I played 4 games with Harry, and then Neil Curley was my coach from there, which was fabulous. I loved girls. I loved playing footy for him, and we ended up having a really good relationship post-footy as well, which has been outstanding.
Because 74 in terms of, so the first grand final at Footy Park, Arctic Park, the wind. And you guys probably didn't really have that much luck in that game. You did in the 81 prelim, but the 74...
Yeah, cool. No, we did. Was that against Nord?
Yeah.
That 81 play? I thought it might have been.
Yeah,
we
felt
did have
that
the
was
win
bizarre.
for 3 quarters. And
but the 74 one, I thought you Sturt had a fair bit more of the wind there.
Yeah, they did. You talk to the Sturt guys, they've forgotten conveniently. The first year at Footy Park, single grandstand, the wind was incredibly tricky at Footy Park. And they were lucky enough, they won the toss because Peter Marker wouldn't cheat and point the right way, but that's a different story. Curls had encouraged him to
it's a winning move to do that. Gags did it one game.
Anyway, it probably would have been a winning move that day. I think Sturt kicked 6 in the first quarter. Then the rain came 7 or 8 minutes into the second quarter, and it wasn't much in it at three-quarter time, but with the wind, I'm sure with no rain, we'd have kicked more than the 4 goals I think we kicked in the second quarter. And then third quarter was tight, and then the last quarter, the wind seemed to have died. And as I said, Sturt players don't necessarily agree with that. They reckon Kenny Whelan kicked a 50-metre screw punt into the breeze, and I thought, no, that's not possible. Like the wind had died. So it was a reasonably close game of footy, but things didn't go our way. It was really interesting moving to Footy Park because Adelaide Oval was the best oval in the country to play footy. But it was a move that the SANFL had to make, so I absolutely understand it. But we didn't have that much success at Footy Park until 85, 86. Played a few grand finals there, unfortunately, and lost them all until 85, 86.
One thing, though, we can't gloss over in terms of the 73 one as Glenelg folklore. Bob Tregenza's effort that day is one of the great grandfathers. So it was quite remarkable that it would have been incredible to have the Jack Odie medal there back then. What the voting could have been, because it would have been interesting. Theoretically, could have had 3 different players from one person to the next. So it was
I thought Bomber Hamilton played a great game that day as well. So. Curls would have definitely given it to Bob Tregenza. Not from a stats point of view, just from a pure effort. When Bob Tartapat sort of went off early in the second quarter, and Trigger had to take the majority of the rucking from there on, and his effort was enormous.
So, what are your thoughts, obviously, on the 73 grand final? You've started in Warrnambool, you've come to South Australia, you're playing for Glenelg, and you find yourself in your first grand final. What were some of the thoughts at the time, or was it you were just a young fella and get out there and play?
Well, I think I was a young fella just having fun playing footy. It was my first final series, so sort of moving through to the grand final and winning the grand final. I thought, well, this is great. This is what footy's all about. Playing in grand finals and winning them, and thought we'd have more to come. I didn't absolutely realise that the anguish would go through the next few years until 85. And I think I played in 5 losing grand finals in that period. So I didn't appreciate it enough at 19. It was sort of, just all happened.
Did you mainly stand Neil Sachs that day?
Only Neil Sachs, although Barry Robin did play loose in defence for a quarter and a bit, I think, and I thought, gosh, Barry Robert and Neil Sachs, that's a bit much.
And you kicked 6 super, quite remarkable in terms of, and 7 goals as a rover with Rex Voigt.
Rex is amazing when he's sort of playing half the game on the ball, and he still kicked 7, whereas it's centre half forward the whole day. So the ball was coming in fairly well. I still think Carey Hamilton, who I rate as one of the best footballers I've seen play, like he's up with the best. Unfortunately, probably didn't get the best out of himself long enough. He won our best and fairest in 73. But playing centre half forward in front of a guy like that, he made my life easy. He could deliver the ball where I wanted it. And whether I was in front, he'd kick it at a few yards in front of me. If I was behind, he'd go over the top of the centre half back, and he made life easy for me. So I give him a lot of credit for 73. I did have a good year in 73. As you said earlier, I did lead the goal kicking in 73, which was mostly as a centre half forward. I did sneak down a full forward occasionally and kick a couple as well. So. Yeah,
And then
but a fantastic year.
Now we'll take our time on this next year, Pete. So 75, where
Yeah,
This is the payback year.
yeah, 75, where really you actually had a pretty good duel with Stephen Curley that day, where you kicked 3, but Curls did a fair bit of rebound from half back as well.
Yeah.
I thought
he
two
got
broke
me a good one too at one stage.
Yeah, he could go. He wasn't bad in that regard.
I think he just missed the footy and got my nose instead. But
well, nothing wrong
we
with
did
that.
have some. We had some good clashes,
Yeah.
and I look at 75 from my point of view as probably our most disappointing grand final, because I thought we had the best side, and we lost. Low scoring game though. I think
9-10 to 7,
9-10
to 7-10. And Fred Phillips obviously kicking the 6 points and one out on the full with the golden boots.
You had to slip that one in, didn't you, mate?
Yeah. In terms of though,
and look, and I'll defend Fred a bit here. He did have a very high ball toss, and Footy Park was such a hard oval to kick with that breeze, and it was and Fred was a pretty accurate shot for goal overall. He just had a bad day at Footy Park, and you could quite easily have a bad day at Footy Park when it was windy.
Totally agree with that. But in terms of that regard, Nord did finish minor premiers. I've always thought that game, personally, yes, Glenelg won the second semi reasonably convincingly. But I always thought the grand final was a 50-50 game. Yes, Stazza out injured for us was a big loss. But I've always found that in where for mine it was a 50. And just like this year, I tipped Glenelg.
Yep.
I always thought it was a 50-50 game where I always thought that as an I was a kid. I was 12 in 75. But, yeah, I thought the same thing in terms of that regard.
Yeah, it was always going to be a close game. But as I said, I thought if you went man for man,
that's fair.
thought we had a slightly more talented side with someone like Stazza out. Yeah. Obviously, I don't know who played on Fred. That was that Jimmy Till.
Yeah, the late Jim Till. Yeah, the late great Jim Till.
A good player that too.
Yeah, and both Stazza and Jim no longer with us, well and truly.
Yeah.
So So we then moved through. So,
what happened in 76?
Well, 76 was we'd played Sturt 3 times in about 5 or 6 weeks. You'd probably check the stats. And we played them late in the year and thrashed them like it was like 10 goals or more. Then we played them again in I don't know what it would have been.
Qualifying?
Well, I'm not sure. We were playing Final 5. I forget. So, but it was it probably was a qualifying final.
Yeah, I reckon it was.
And we beat them again comfortably. And then we played them again in the preliminary final, and they got us. And it was a game I still remember quite vividly. I remember late in the third quarter, Phyllis had a kick from about 20 metres out on a pretty straight in front and missed. That kick would have put us 17 points in front. As I said, he missed, so we were 12 points in front. The ball's come down our end, and I'll never forget Rick Davies under the footy. I'm just behind him. I've marked the ball, and Des Foster's paid a push in the back to Rick Davies, which he still laughs about today.
Oh, we're still waiting for the one Donnelly to get the free kick this year. We're waiting for the whistle.
Keep waiting for that one. Anyway, so that game was gone from we should have been 17 points in front to a kick in front. And it just changed the complexion of the game that 5 minutes before three-quarter time, and Sturt just won in the last. And we all thought Port was going to be the outstanding side. They'd been outstanding all year. And for Sturt to get to the grand final again, Davies played
arguably the best South
ever.
Australian game. Arguably the best game in South
Unbelievable.
Australian footy history, really.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was stats were 20, 20, 20 or something.
Yeah, 22, I reckon it is.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
You got a better memory than me.
Yeah.
That's enough to give him 20, 20, 20.
Yeah, exactly.
We still
crazy.
touch, and we try and sit together at the Hall of Fame dinner in Melbourne, and if I do get to Perth, I go and have a game of golf with him, and so we still catch up. Great man, and that was an amazing game. I was listening to it, the scores at Cheltenham Racecourse, because I had no interest in the grand final.
Don't blame you for that.
Fair enough.
Well, losing the preliminary final was devastating, so I didn't want to go and watch the grand final for sure.
Were you on a winner at Cheltenham then?
I can't remember.
And so then going through, then of course, gloss over to a couple of games. So of course, the 81 prelim went your right way, but then the grand final in 80. Well, no, the grand final in 81. What's your remember? The in terms of the Granger bit and all that sort of things too. So.
Yeah, well, Port beat us pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
There were some incidents that are probably better forgotten, but Port were too good. Like, regardless of what happened in that game, I think Port just outplayed us from fairly early. So I certainly can't say anything. David Granger obviously copped a bit of flack for what he did. Wasn't great, but that sort of happened in footy in those days.
Yes,
So 81, 82 was, it was later. It was 84 that I was upset with missing out. So 82,
I totally
we
agree.
got thrashed again.
But should you have played? I thought you showed a fair bit of character in 82.
Yeah.
What did you have, a driver?
I'd injured a driver before our first final. I had a fitness test sort of on a Saturday morning, and I'd slipped on the cricket pitch, which it was quite hard, and my driver went, and I couldn't kick with my right foot at all.
Yeah.
And I still remember having a fitness test. So there was Dr. Perlman was the doctor then that did the test. He's rung up John Halbert, given him the news. Halbert asked to speak to me. And I said, look, John, I can run about 50% pace. He said, that's enough for me. You're playing. So I played. But I played for, it would have been probably 4 weeks through the final.
Yeah.
And then we got to the grand final, and I still hadn't kicked right foot that whole time. And I remember, and I'd managed to give the ball off fairly frequently. But Nord were sort of awake to that, and I took a mark about 15 metres out, very slight angle, and completely covered. Nord covered all the Glenelg players around me because they knew that I'd try and hand it off. So I decided to kick left foot, and I missed.
Yeah.
And the game was probably not out of reach there.
Yeah.
I think there was about 3 goals in it. Missing that goal didn't help. Nord might have kicked another one before half-time, but we ended up getting thrashed in the second half. So we'll never know.
I thought you showed a fair bit of character trying to play, whether you should have played or not. But we knew your driver was stuffed, and I do remember amongst the even then it wasn't involved a great deal, but I do remember that someone said, "Don't worry, if Carey gets the ball, we ain't leaving any Glenelg player free. We're going to make him kick." And it did turn out that way.
Yeah. No, it was a disappointing finish to the season. I guess
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.